The nominees are... Hello, everyone. As Dad and I are busy watching old movies in preparation for our regular episodes, I thought I would share some behind-the-scenes B-roll practices that we did. I think that there's some good, fun, and interesting stuff here, but they don't quite fit into our regular episode format. I still think that they're valuable, and I think that you will still probably enjoy listening to them. I'm calling this collection of 4 mini episodes Season 0, something like an extended pregame show. These will help you get to know us somewhat so we don't feel like complete strangers to you, but they'll also give you some interesting trivia as well as some insight into the show. I hope that you will enjoy these pregame mini episodes and that they whet your appetite for the regular episodes that are to come. In this second pregame mini episode, Dad shares his thoughts on the importance of movies in his life, his thoughts on doing this podcast, and takes a trip down memory lane and shares what movies he loved growing up and into adulthood.
Hello, my name is William Shea, and this is our opportunity to welcome you to the Shea Cinema, with the project being the Best Picture Project, as we're going to call it. I want to let you know a little bit about myself and how movies or cinema or film came to be important. And that relates to that we all have incidents in our lives that can encapsulate complicated abstractions in a surprising human way. I'm going to tell you a couple of those times in my life that have taught me something about movies or film or cinema. This does mean that you should know a little bit about me. I grew up as the second oldest of 13 children in a pretty traditional Catholic home. As kids, we spent our summers playing a lot of baseball and watching movies on TV. In those days, the only access to movies was the theaters in which they were shown or the Saturday night presentations put on television. Often, these Saturday night presentations were second-rate monster movies or slapstick comedies that an 8 or 9-year-old could comprehend or even relish. Since going to the movies was a big deal, that took planning and some extra cash that was hard to come by. Television provided the staple movie diet for us. Eventually, though, television generated more movies, and we would watch with our parents, and especially with my dad. My dad was often eager that we view movies from his own early life that carried fond memories or special meaning. I'm particularly thinking of a movie called The Search, in which 2 American soldiers in post-war Germany find an apparently orphaned child and take him in, a subject my father sometimes discussed in an emotional way. So that was particularly interesting to him. And I think he wanted to share all these things, probably because he wanted his children to understand him and his milieu better. I remember my mother being particularly interested in a movie called The Snake Pit, which involved the placement of a woman in an insane asylum and the treatment that she received at the hands of a kind and understanding therapist. So many movies elicited important matters of history or morality or ethics. So movies played a crucial role in the development of character and the vision myself and my brothers and sisters inculcated about the world. Just as viewing in the home was a chance to gauge the response of others, particularly I remember my sister Mary Lou uh, claiming at the end of some movies, "Oh, what a stupid ending." But being in a theater offered that same chance in a much more diverse environment, such as the collective gasp of the audience in the at the end of the third act while watching Kenneth Branagh's Hamlet was a release that was felt by many in the theater. Well, in some, the movies affected us profoundly and in ways that we couldn't quite control. They affected our relationship with others, including those we dated. Uh, that was the best way to go on a date in high school, that I remember anyway, that you're going to go to a movie. What movies do I remember? The Ten Commandments in a drive-in, for heaven's sakes. Um, Goldfinger, uh, A Thousand Clowns, uh, movies in the late 60s, Georgie Girl. Uh, all those movies are in my mind as being part of the culture that we lived in at the time. It affected others that we've often socialized with. This hopefully clearly explains how movies generated my relationship with my own children. My children needed to have the same valuable experience I enjoyed as a child, as a teenager, and as an adult. Enjoying movies helps show us who we are. This has been an almost elemental part of my relationship with my daughter Sarah. Our discussions and opinions about movies are scintillating and instructive, at least to us. We have no particular expertise or insights that are unique, but Sarah is giving us the opportunity to have a dialogue with each other and with you that might lead to a discussion of issues that need to be discussed. We might delve into matters that may be avoided or eschewed for serious or trivial reasons. All these things we need to talk about. This alone is a substantial and valid rationale to be undertaking this endeavor of Shea Cinema, the Best Picture Project. Of course, there are thousands, tens of thousands of movies that never received any accolades or awards from any organization. And those movies may too have had an effect on us or evoke a memory that is either pleasant or eerie or scary or thoughtful. And we may not even discuss those. But it's important to recognize that the whole business of movies is one that is been with us for more than 120 more than 120 years, and that it is a primary way that uh, we have learned about our culture, our history, each other, and the importance of experiencing the same kinds of thing. The storytelling that goes on is a uh, human function that has always been important, and we can reflect both our own experience. We can try to understand the experience of others, and we can dialogue. We can at least try to understand where it is that we can meet to be respectful and cognizant of others. So we'll keep that in mind as as we discuss these things, even if we are only discussing uh, these films that have been recognized. There are many thousands of films that won't be recognized that may be just as important to us. Perhaps they'll be mentioned from time to time. We shall see. When we talk about movies and what attracts us or perhaps even repels us, it would be good to know that the uh, movies that people go to or like or seek are different for everybody. When I was growing up, we particularly liked probably comedies. I think fondly of movies that I would watch even if I've seen them dozens of times because they have a place that is uh, special or uh, remembered in a way that is uh, uh, memorable. Comedies seem to be a big thing. I think Sarah indicated that we always liked the uh, Bing Crosby, Bob Hope, Dorothy Lamour road pictures. Uh, and as we got older, we began to understand more the give and take that was happening in the movie, the jibing that went on, the allusion to certain things that were topical at the time, but that are now totally forgotten. I can remember a couple of, with regard to comedies, a couple of Red Skelton movies, The Fuller Brush Man, which had a famous, at least to us, a famous scene where the Girl Scouts are trying to put out a fire in the park and go to each other, turning to each other, flapping their hands, going, "Beaver Patrol to the rescue." That's a phrase that in my family anybody would recognize and laugh at. Uh, there was another Red Skelton movie called The Southern Yankee, which had a line, "It's nice to be back among the magnolias again," which was the way a spy was supposed to find out if he was among uh, other spies. Um, we got older, musicals were always important because music played a large part in the family setting, and uh, uh, musicals that I recall particularly would be oh the Gold Diggers movies, 42nd Street, um, Yankee Doodle Dandy, anything with Cagney was fun. Although the gangster movies were less interesting to me, although I think they were important in the character in the development of Hollywood. Uh, War movies were so numerous that it would be hard to think about the experience of the movies without it. So sometimes religious movies, I think of the movies, The Ten Commandments, Ben Hur, uh, the Cecil B. DeMille silent movie about Jesus. What was the name of the movie? Uh, King of Kings. Um, Funny stories about that movie that I can tell. There was a scene in that movie which starred a young actor by the name of H.B. Warner. H.B. Warner played Jesus. Uh, H.B. Warner would later play the drunk in the Frank Capra movie uh, "It's a Wonderful Life." During the filming, Warner and a young extra by the name of Sally Rand, who became famous as a fan dancer, apparently dancing in the nude, hiding her body with her feathers, was having an affair with H.B. Warner. And this was well known on the lot. And there was a period of time when all the cast was in the studio ready to proceed with the scene when H.B. Warner and Sally Rand came running onto the lot, sort of out of breath. DeMille, through his megaphone, said something like, "Miss Rand, leave my Jesus Christ alone. If you have to screw someone, screw Pontius Pilate." So, so religious movies were somewhat important. The first movie I ever saw was a movie that I remember seeing in the theater. Was a movie called The Miracle of Marcelino, which was sort of this touching Italian film that was obviously dubbed about a young boy who is in a monastery because he's orphaned and is spoken to by uh, the Jesus on the crucifix when he's in the chapel, and that was a very interesting film that our parents would let us see because because it had this nice religious theme. I suppose there were action movies too. I mean, James Bond and all those kinds of things that had an attraction for us. There were movies that I didn't like, and maybe they were. I think until I was much older, didn't particularly like foreign films, which were hard to understand and had weird storylines anyway. Um, but uh, could have been cinematically interesting. Um, Movies by Buñuel or Truffaut or uh, oh, Ingmar Bergman, whose movies that I liked very much later on when I was an adult, uh, but were Wild Strawberries and the the figure of death uh, appearing where death plays chess with with one of the main characters. Um, so this is kind of a rambling way of talking about the uh, enjoyment of movies. Um, always kind of liked Frank Capra movies. When I was in college, um, had a chance to meet Frank Capra when he wrote his book, The Name Above the Title, and was on a book tour, and we went and heard him talk. Capra was a rather important person in Hollywood in the 30s. I think he was the president of the Academy, and he was the winner of at least 3 Academy Awards for Best Director. It happened one night. You can't take it with you. Was it You Can't Take It With You? But he also did a fun movie that we enjoyed as kids uh, about the 2 ants who poison their renters, Arsenic and Old Lace. Uh, but he also did in that year of 1939, the so-called the greatest year of movie making in history. Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. So those were fun, and they were thoughtful. I think they're probably still thoughtful, even though sometimes his movies were referred to by critics who did not like them as Capricorn. And so the meeting him was a kind of a fun thing to do. Old at the time, and just uh, uh, realizing now, after many years, how important he was in the development of the Academy, the Motion Picture Arts Academy, um, uh, was, uh, was curious. I suppose adventure movies too. There were certain adventure movies that we liked. The Adventures of Robin Hood with Errol Flynn and Olivia de Havilland was always a wonderful thing to see, wherein Robin Hood uh, goes into the king's castle, and one of the kings, or is it King John? One of King John's, one of his cronies says to him, you, "You speak treason," and Robin Hood says fluently. One of the better lines. There are lots of lines in movies too that have come into the culture. Many lines. We're not in Kansas anymore. Uh, this is the stuff that dreams are made of. Um, uh, you had me at hello. Is that what it is? I'll have what she's having. Here's looking at you, kid. Casablanca is full of uh, those sorts of movies, and I think it won an Academy Award for um, screenplay. If it didn't, it should have. The other one that had a lot of wonderful lines in it was Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid. Um, Whatever they're paying you, it's not enough. Did you use enough dynamite, Butch? You think about that, Butch. That's what you're good at. Uh, I think that in as I was a teenager or in college, there were movies that were very important that we got to that we went to, because we went to the movies often in those days. The Graduate being one that was really important. The other movie that was really important it was for us when I watched with my three of my brothers, Jerry, Paul, and Richard, Midnight Cowboy, which was just a powerhouse and a surprise movie that actually won Best Picture. But lines like, frankly, you are beginning to smell, and for a stud in New York, that is a handicap. I'm walking here, which was apparently an ad lib in the movie. But there's a funny sequence. It is really rambling, a funny sequence in the movie in those days, around those days, 1966 or so, of 1,000 Clowns, which actually was a movie that was nominated for Best Picture. It had come from a play, and it was not anywhere near the quality of the films that actually, the other films that were nominated that year. Jason Robards plays a character by the name of Murray Burns, who, whenever the phone rings and he answers the phone, he says, "Do you have good news or money?" "No," and he hangs up. Sort of a classic line that I've often used in life.
That's it for this pregame mini episode. Thank you so much for listening, and stay tuned for our first regular season of Shea Cinema, the Best Picture Project. Season 1 will be covering the first Academy Awards, which was in 1929. We will be watching and reviewing 6 films nominated for Best Picture, which were released in 1927 and 1928. All of these films are silent, so come and sit with us for what will be sure to be quite an interesting endeavor.